Title of the song, Unforgettable, which is exactly what the co-host is, Mrs. Judy Busby, this morning. How are you this morning, Mrs. Busby?
Well, you sweet-talking devil, I'm just fine. And yourself? You had a late night last night.
Yeah. Oh, you were peeking.
No, that was great.
Was it an 8 night?
Tell us what you did.
Well, first and foremost, I'm going to give a kudo, and then I want to get into that because it's very important. We might remember the Reifsteck family. And, of course, I served many years on the school board with Tony, Elaine.
Oh, yes.
Elaine
and she's
Osmond.
Still as busy as she ever was.
Absolutely. Well, Elaine, in her infant compassion, owns culverts, of course. And the other day, they dedicated all of the proceeds, not a portion, all of the proceeds, for a young lady who has the same problem that Elaine's sister fought for about 25 years before she left us.
It's a common fact.
And I thought that was, I went out and boy, they were doing a brisk business, and I was sure happy to see that. So kudos to Elaine Reifsteck and Culvers for taking care of, that she saw a need and jumped in there.
Well, and
of course, that's what they do.
She does a lot for the service organizations, too. And I know the Oasis goes out there once a month and gets a little portion of the proceeds for washing off the tables and delivering the drive-up orders and so forth. And that's so helpful.
Well, they're giving back to the community.
Well, they sure are.
They sure, in a big way. Well, you mentioned being a late night, short night of sleep. Went down to the reception for the honor flight with Richard and Mary Ellen Martin, our dear friends. We've been going often. Old Bill has tried to go every one. Last year they had 6 flights. Now, just amazing. Out of the Central Illinois community, and it cost them upwards of maybe $75, $80
a piece.
And we had 6 flights last year. Think of the giving to that. Anyway, it was a big crowd, and usually the governor's there. Last night he didn't make it, but Congressman Rodney Davis was there, and we appreciated the fact that he took some time. 73, I think, veterans went on this flight, and some 40 wheelchairs. And as I said to Richard, boy, some of those folks didn't make it a day too soon. Some are in pretty good shape, and then the age is taking its toll on others,
Well.
So that's just a great thing. And by the way, and I want to be sure and mention this, there was a young lady going amongst the veterans there and handing out invitations to a veterans picnic down in Springfield, and it's the Springfield chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution.
Oh.
Now, those ladies are proud of that heritage, let me tell you. My mother was fiercely proud of being a DAR. And it isn't something you just get invited to join. You've got to document
all the
way back to the beginning of Christendom almost to show that you had a descendant that was a part of the American Revolution.
My mother-in-law told me one day, she was showing me some of her little memorabilia, and she had a ribbon, a sash that people wore, and some pins, and they had belonged to her grandmother. And if I'm remembering correctly, she was the state president of the DAR in Minnesota. Yes, and I said, you must tell the family about this, because Grandma Busby wasn't one to tell everything. Well, she was busy raising those 10 kids, She really didn't have time for chit-chat.
She was busy with it. Well, anyway, this nice young lady by the name of Deb Hill, I got her name and wrote it down. Want to give her a little credit. On the May the 13th, they're going to have a nice veterans picnic down at Southwind Park in Springfield, and from 10 a.m. to 2, all veterans are welcome. So isn't that a nice thing for them to do?
Well, maybe we'll have to re-announce that again so that others will remember.
Okay, maybe I'll let you out right now, and then you can come back in.
Yeah, I'm not in my regular seat there so that I can be the door monitor.
There you go. The cat's out, folks. The cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
In any event, it was a nice evening. Big crowd. As I said to a young fellow was sitting next to me, 8th grader, I presumed, and it turned out I was right. And he and his cousin were there, and his cousin was a freshman in high school. And I said, "Men, you're experiencing what I call a slice of Americana." And I told him about how important this was to the veterans that took place in these things, and I told him how it started. And the mother of the aunt she was interested to know that. And it's kind of interesting, to repeat for those who might not remember, the honor flight was started by a single individual. And because of his efforts, it's grown exponentially now, and it's in all 50 states. I'm not sure it's in Hawaii. I better recant on that. Could that be an awful long flight? It's a long flight from the West Coast to Hawaii.
Yes.
Maybe they do. I don't know. But in any event, because one man got this thing started, and just think of the hundreds of thousands of veterans that's had a major impact on.
Did they happen to tell you anything about the breakdown of the attendees? How many now are from the Second World War? Because that's what it started
Richard
with.
and I counted, and I think out of these some 73, we're down to about, I think there were 12 or 13 blue shirts now. Those were the World War II veterans. And I was telling Judy coming up, Jim, met a gentleman, introduced myself to him, and I said, "How old are you, Tiger?" He said, "I'm 95. And I said, "Well, you're going to go for 100. Well, he says, "I think so." And I said, "Well, you make it, you call me, because I'm going to come right behind you."
Good for you. Good for you.
And another nice thing that happened, these young fair queens or community queens, or these young ladies get themselves dolled up in their queen costumes and dresses, I should say. And I like the kid Orville raises his eyes a little bit when they walk by.
Well, he's still young at heart.
Check his blood pressure for him. But seriously, it's nice that they do that. They give up their time and come, and they just are there to welcome the planes back.
Well, and it's a long evening. Mm-hmm. You said it was 11:30 by the time you got home. Yes.
Well, of course, they leave out there at somewhere 7:30 or so, and the plane gets back here. It's 9:15, 9:30, and they were on schedule this time. And then, of course, it takes a long time for them to get organized. It isn't like you and I getting up at O'Hare and getting off the plane. There's a lot of organization goes on getting, particularly those fellows who are in wheelchairs. They have to get those out and so forth. So it's a big to-do. And that's why, of course, they have to have their folks with them as companions, so that they can push the wheelchairs around.
Now, what time in the morning do they take off? Because they have a very long day.
It's a long day, I can tell you from experience. I think we left the ground, I think our wheels were up about 6:45 when I went. That's several years ago, though. Don't ask me, because that was yesterday. I'm not sure I can remember the details that deeply. But it's a great thing. And as I said, these young men didn't know who Norman Rockwell was, of course.
Yep, no.
And I said, I told him about him and what kind of artwork he did, and I said, I call this what you're experiencing, that part of Norman Rockwell's Americana.
Yeah, right.
And my gosh, the clothes some of those people don't wear to come down to those things. It's like you just can't believe people go out in the yard to hang the laundry dressed like some of them do.
Yeah.
I just don't understand that, but of course I know I'm old, so that's that.
Well, it kind of all is in the same basket, this business of the waning of people exhibiting respect for anything or anyone.
Well, there's a key word, respect. By the way, speaking of respect, I noted in this morning's paper where somebody's got their knickers in a wad down there at the Presidential Library and Museum. They moved the John Wilkes Booth statue, for want of a better word, and it had been down there, and the story that I read in that it depicted him hanging around Lincoln just prior to the assassination. And so they apparently, I never noticed it, been down there a couple of times, there he was outside and around Lincoln. Well, the new director didn't want him to have that sort of publicity or whatever, so they moved him a little bit. And somebody's got their knickers all in a wad because John Wilkes Booth has been moved.
Oh, gosh, really, it doesn't really pay to sweat the small stuff,
Oh, really? That's what I asked Rod Davis. That was nice of him to make the... let's see, he's over in the Taylorville district, isn't he? I've forgotten what the south and east of Springfield, I think. Anyway, adjacent to our district. I said, we belong to Darren. He said, yeah. He said, I know you're one of Darren's boys. So I said to him, well, not really.
Did you see that the article where 3 of the area representatives were asked how they voted on the health care bill?
No, I did not.
And he said he wasn't saying.
That's a cop-out.
Oh, I think.
That's a
just
cop-out.
A titch.
Yeah, right. Well, I asked Congressman Davis, I said, you're butting your head against a stone wall out there, and as they are down here in Springfield. And I said, nobody seems to want to give anything.
No.
I said, how do you come back to your district and talk to people like that who are whizzed? And he says, it's not easy.
It's just a bit sophomoric, don't you think?
Those folks can't spell sophomoric.
Oh, okay. Well, think, would childish float for you?
Well, yes, that would. They could do that. They could spell childish. But in any event, it was a very, very nice evening last night. Orville Schaefer and Wayne Shealy, my high school classmates, a class of 41, just a bunch of young folks. They always make it a point to go down there too, and I think they've missed very, very few. And it's funny, you meet a lot of different people, and what I like to do is I like to watch these kids, and that's all new to them, and some of them are pretty young, and others are high school age. And it's important for them, in my judgment, it's important for them to experience that and know the background. That's why I was trying to tell these 2 young men how this, and my point in talking to them was, and I just want to tell you, it shows how you can make a difference. One man made a difference in all these hundreds of thousands. Yes. You can make a difference in your life. So her mother was kind of saying back at her, oh boy, that's pretty good.
I was glad to hear that they had gotten to the point where they were including the Vietnam veterans, because they got a short shrift when they got
I think
home.
It's really appropriate. See, now we have 3. They always give us T-shirts, and the World War II boys. We wear blue T-shirts. The Koreans have a kind of an orange or a yellow T-shirt, and the Vietnam boys have a red T-shirt. And that's kind of appropriate for them with all the blood that was spent over there uselessly. You have to wonder exactly what of course, the McNamara and that group they're all gone. They weren't thought of very well, by the way. So, here we are, out of cigarettes, holding hands at midnight. Look how late it gets. Judith and I are waiting for our guest, which have probably stuck between Atlanta and, as Billy Randolph used to say, Chetnut. Billy could never say the S's, and he always called it Chetnut. So we had Dee Dee Drake was supposed to be here with Caesar. What was Caesar's last name?
Let me tell you.
Yeah, help me out there.
Andrade,
yes. Caesar is a gentleman who was made a new citizen about 2 years ago, Judith. Something like that.
Oh no, it's been he's celebrating the 10th.
Oh no, we didn't have him that long. We had him on the air, and then
he's celebrating his 10th anniversary at the restaurant there in Chetnut.
Yeah, okay, all right. But then he was made a citizen 2 or 3 years. We had him in the studio up here, Jim. Then we also went over there one day to have lunch with him in his restaurant. So they're going to talk about something going on in Chetnut. Yeah,
they're having a big on the 29th. They're having a big celebration over there called Check Out Chestnut, and it's from 11 to 3 on that Saturday, the 29th. Cesar's restaurant will be providing a complimentary barbecue sandwich lunch, which is very nice. And they're having vendors and organizations set up at the firehouse there. And they'll have crafts and business information, local artists. C&R Antique Store will have some specials. Lincoln Fire will be working with the Chestnut Fire and EMS to provide fire safety information with the smokehouse and free blood pressure screenings. And so they're going to have a big day over there. We could have heard about it, but that ship has sailed.
Well, it may be floundering off the coast somewhere, trying to find its way into the harbor.
You know, two of the better known industries over there are Gail's Pumpkin Patch. Come Halloween time, people go in droves over there.
But you know, I thought that was closer to Beeson. But I know where it is. I've been there many times. Well, not many times, several times.
And Saucy's Apiary.
Maybe that's what I'm talking about.
Not aviary.
No.
Apiary.
Yeah, there is a difference. You want to define that difference for those unwashed out there?
Both of them?
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that Saucy's had that. But it must be a really big outfit.
Gail's Pumpkin Patch was
just outside of Chestnut.
They do big business over there in the fall. It's a nice place to take little folks.
And Chestnut is the geo-center.
Yeah, don't forget that.
Of Illinois. I didn't realize that. You know, I kind of thought Middletown might be, because they called it Middletown. But what was it in the middle of?
That's my neighbor's. Well, no, you didn't grow up here. That's the problem. You grew up there with all those Norwegians up there.
Yeah, they got a bunch of them up there. But you know, my license plate on my car is UFTA 64. And the significance of the 64 is that 63 other Norwegians had already applied for that in the state of Illinois. I didn't know there were 63 other Norwegians in the state of Illinois.
That is the truth. I never knew that. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, when will you apply again?
What did I write?
Your application just came up, same as mine this year, April. So
yeah.
Get a new plate.
Yeah, I see that they've got a new plate.
Not a plate as such, but I got a sticker. But I think they may have some new.
Well, but there's new plates too. I've seen Illinois plates that are different. They have a blue top.
By the way, speaking of such matters as efficiency in the state government, that's the one office that I think that we get our money's worth. Our Secretary of State's office. Out here on our North Kickapoo, they do a whale of a job.
Yes.
Yes. I went in there, and I wasn't in there 5 minutes. Took check in, had all the paperwork done. She gave me the sticker, and I was out the door.
Yeah, it doesn't take long at all. Speaking of the departments of the sovereign state of Illinois, Danny Tackett, according to his article in the paper, didn't much care for IDOT and their contractor that parked all those trucks out there on Old 66.
And it's not going to be
Which is our big tourist attraction, don't you know?
It's not going to be open for a long time. I drove on the other side of that road the other day just to see what in the world was going on, and they're building an approach to the railroad from that side road where the Warwick farmstead was. They're building it, so they're going to put a new, change it from where it is at the old Madigan Park entrance.
Yeah?
I don't know, but it looks to me like they're going to put a whole new railroad crossing just down the road, a few hundred yards.
We hear talk time and time and again of the bad shape that roads and bridges are in. How much money did it cost on the Sportsman's Club out at the edge of Lincoln to put that new
vista into Lincoln as you come from the south?
Yes, yeah. What'd that cost, and why?
648-5510. Somebody might want to wing in on this and help Judith and I out, because I might go to sleep between now and 9 o'clock.
Oh, please try not to do that.
648-5510. You might have somebody seriously might have some hardcore information on that road down there on Old 66 and what's going on. Which reminds me of the high-speed railroad that's supposedly won't be here when I'm gone. In any event, what is the predicted amount of time that they're supposed to save between Chicago and St. Louis, and compare that with the incredible amount of money that's being spent to create that?
For the fencing alone.
Fencing alone. Don't get me started on that.
Yeah. I've heard 10 minutes, but not from anybody who.
50 minutes from Chicago to St. Louis. I think it's something like 50 minutes.
Well, see, there you are. One of us is talking to people that don't know what they're talking about.
Well, that could be said.
That's a long way between 10 minutes and 50 minutes.
With your circle of friends, that could happen every day.
Well, was that kindly? They're your friends too, Bud.
Oh, there's that too. Who said it had to be kindly?
Oh, dear heaven.
So, the Springfield high-speed corridor. There seems to be some question now whether it's going to go down 3rd Street, which is conventional route now past the old depot in Springfield, or over on the east side, down around the 9th Street or 10th Street area. And I don't know how somebody might know something about that. I'm going to let the cat out now.
Well, they're going to have to come to a decision here.
Yeah, because they're making underpasses and so forth. They just opened up the Grand Avenue, or the North Grand underpass on 9th Street, and they spent $1 or $2 on that. You figured out how much they spent on black wrought iron fencing?
Boy, wouldn't I like to have some of that fence around my yard?
Or have you figured, Jim, why they would put special pedestrian crossings where they're putting in the new gates? They're spending a fortune, just a fortune on these gates.
Well, I guess if you got it, flaunt it, huh?
That's never mind. I'm not going there.
Aren't you?
Yeah, I think it's time for a commercial right now. So, Mr. Ash, we'll take a break and we'll flip the right dials. Program is Viewpoint, that scintillating program that keeps everybody hanging on the edge of their seats, wondering what Judith and I are going to come up with next, and we're not sure either.
Well, we would be eternally grateful if you would call 648-5510 and just say something.
Even if they say something and hang up?
Even if it's wrong.
Well, you mentioned off-air. They had an incident up at, I guess it was Chicago, where the gentleman was dragged off of the airplane at United. Somebody made a bad decision up there. Somebody made a terribly wrong decision in going that far with that particular episode. And the interesting thing about it is, they were bumping those 4 seats to accommodate their own crew members.
Yeah.
Bad decision. And I suspect that $800 they were going to pay him is going to grow several times.
Oh, I think monumentally.
So you have to wonder in somebody, and making corporate decisions like that, they say, well, this is the way they do it. Well, duh. Somewhere there has to be a little common sense slip in there.
Well, I guess it's just gone viral. People are just commenting all over the place about it. And the CEO said it was a little faux pas.
No, I'd say that's a major fox pass.
It also affected their stock price.
Yeah.
By a bit.
Yeah, I thought about dumping my stock. I had several $1,000s.
Oh, I knew you would have.
Well, when you see corporate decisions made that, somebody somewhere has to stop and say, well, where does common sense kick in here? And no common sense was exemplified there by any shape.
I was kind of thinking in the back of my head, what was the reason that all 4 of them had to be on the same flight?
Well, that's the way it's done. And they say, well, that's, why we're doing this? Well, I don't know, but that's the way they've always done it.
Well, that is a war cry all over the country. Why do we do it this way? Well, we've always done it this way.
I noted also that why we're doing it this way, because Dr. Ben Carson seems to have unearthed a fair amount of money that was screwed away out there in his Department of Health, Education, Welfare. It's amazing. But of course, there again, they're working for the government. It's just, don't worry about it. The taxpayers take care of it.
Yeah, I guess if you don't have any ownership in things, you're not maybe as diligent as if it were your own. Does that make sense? Well,
there's a problem. You used it, the operative word, makes sense.
Oh, another mistake.
And that's your problem, because they're supposed to make sense. They're supposed to use some common sense.
Yeah.
Just like this United Airlines things. Common sense went out the window because, well, we've always done it this way.
Yeah, yeah.
So, all right, 648-5510. Somebody has a story to tell. Got to be, it can't be shady.
I want to get back to this airplane thing. They have a top line on how much they'll offer you to give up your seat.
Yes. Yeah.
What was it, $1,350, I think?
I'm not sure.
And they start with a lower figure and then bid up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
always do.
This man didn't want to give up his seat. And they'd offered him $800. I don't know, maybe they say everybody has their price. Maybe $1,350 would have done it.
I don't know. It happened to us one time. They were overbooked, and so they asked, and so they started offering. I can't remember now, but it was $400 or $500. And I said, Jean, let's get off. She said, no, we're going home. So I took care of that decision.
One time when Cass lived in Minnesota, she was coming down here with Thomas. He was just an infant, and she was a size 2, and they offered them $100 to get off. Between the two of them,
they didn't take much space.
They didn't weigh 100 pounds. And I think you could have thrown their luggage in there, too.
That seat assignment happened to Gene and I. We were going overseas, and Gene said, we were pretty short to boarding time. She said, why don't you go up there and see if they can get an upgrade? Well, I said, I doubt it, but I'll go up. So I went up there and I said, this nice lady, I said, my back and my wife have asked me to come up here and see if it's possible to get an upgrade. Oh, I don't think so, sir, but leave me your passport. So I went and got Jean's passport and mine and sat down, and about 10 minutes later she called me up there and handed me first-class tickets. Well, we're going across the pond.
Oh,
that's
boy.
A big difference.
That's a long ride in the country.
That's a long ride in the country, and I want to tell you, there's a quantum difference between sitting back with the folks and sitting up front with the big boys.
Speaking of upgrades, that reminds me, just very recently, some college professor went ballistic because some girl in first class had given her seat to a serviceman in uniform, and that was the dumbest thing. He said he nearly got sick. It was so stupid.
I'd like to help him get well.
And, you know, my daughter was a frequent flyer for quite a long time. And she said anytime a service person came through in uniform, she always gave them her first class seat.
Well, that she would.
Because that was something you could do to recognize their service to the country, which isn't a fun time for them at all. And this guy had the audacity to say that this first class passenger was so stupid it made him sick.
Yeah, as I say, I'd like to help him get well. I'm reminded of the famous story that this guy was at the counter at the airline tickets, and he was having a difficult time with them. And finally he says, do you know who I am? And the lady picked up the microphone and brought it to her mouth and said, will security please report to gate 12? We have a man who doesn't know who he is. Which I thought one of the supreme put-downs of all time.
Oh, dear. Oh, goodness. Don't you love somebody who's quick like that?
Oh, my. That's a gainful employer there, I'll tell you. Well, when you travel, you run into all kinds, and it's fun to kind of sit back and watch the passing parade. One time we were coming back, and we had a really obnoxious. It was a carpet company tour, is what it was. And in those days, before the IRS got into it, if you did X amount of dollars with a company, you would qualify for a trip. And so we qualified, and this is early on, the early going. We went to Spain, and we had one of those guys that was really obnoxious. Nobody liked the man. Anyway, you could buy X amount of wine and bring it back. And he didn't. Everybody was being very careful of what they had, and all that. And he was drunk, and he dropped his wine in New York City, and everybody applauded.
Oh, really?
Because he was such a jerk, and he was very careful about this wine all the way back, and he dropped it, broke all the bottles.
Oh, sure.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer man.
A person must suspect that he's not being readily included if he acts the way this man did.
I had that happen on a raft trip down going through Grand Canyon.
What was that?
Oh, this guy was obnoxious, although he was by himself, and he was just really obnoxious. And about the fifth day, I said, partner, if you don't shape up, we're all going to throw you over the board.
Oh, dear.
And he kind of quieted down.
Yeah, so, it's interesting, isn't it?
You have any plans that you wanted to divulge for the week so that people can know where you are and what you're up to?
Well, it's Holy Week,
Yes. By the way, we ought to mention that in a very serious manner. Monday, Thursday, we're coming up here very, very quickly, and we start off there, and we kind of get ourselves ready for the great vigil of Easter, and then the rising of Christ on Easter. So it's a serious time for contemplation, and maybe a little recognition that we're pretty insignificant in this whole great scheme of life. So the Presbyterians are going to gather on
yes, actually,
Alvy's drugstore corner, or where are you?
The Presbyterians are going to have a cantata on Monday, Thursday evening, and their fearless leader, their musical leader, is Judy Casa, and
just a modicum of talent, just a little bit of talent. Just a modicum.
Yeah. You want to believe it. So when there's a cantata at the Presbyterian Church, it's worthwhile. And of course, Sunday morning at 10, they'll all gather for the Easter service.
Is this free admittance?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I wanted to cover that and make sure you didn't have a cover charge or anything like that.
No, not so much. Not so much.
You mentioned Judy Casa, which brings us back. We've made kudos to the Lambs Lincoln Area Musical Society before. I'm not reluctant to, again, mention them. Boy, they do contribute so much to our community.
Oh, their spring concert was just beautiful.
Well, these folks get together, as we've often said, give of their own time, and they just don't stand up there on the stage and sing on the appointed day. There's what's known as a little rehearsal that's involved in there, and those folks show up for that, and the accompanist. It's really we're lucky to enjoy that kind of talent in our community.
I ran into Kay Dobson, and she's accompanist for the Lambs group.
Has been for
and very dedicated. And she was telling me what her schedule is for this spring.
Oh my!
And I got tired. I had to go home and rest a little just hearing of it, let alone living it. Oofta.
Well, we're just lucky to have not only the folks who can play instruments well and sing well, but have somebody like Julie Kasich and Tim Serby who can direct. They really put on a whale of a production for us.
Oh my. I was sorry that the Lambs concert this spring wasn't as well attended as it usually is. People missed something. You ought to watch for the arrival of those concerts because they're so worthwhile.
Well, that's kind of like
and so inexpensive. Speaking of free.
Well, yeah, I reckon. That's like saying people don't vote. You know, they talk about 22% being a pretty good turnout. I find that so difficult to rationale that mind in my mind. Why is 20% a good turnout?
And this election was all people who are in taxing bodies, school districts and on library districts, all of these things. You have a vested interest in them.
Well, I reckon.
Not only the people who are on the city government and county government, but all these other taxing bodies, park district, on and on. And nobody gives a toot.
And those elections, by the way, are not inexpensive. They're very expensive.
Well, I would be curious as to what it cost Sally Turner per vote with that turnout, because all the precincts are manned all over, and that's not cheap. You got the same people sitting there, whether they get 22% or 72%.
By the way, speaking of Sally, our county offices, once again, I had an occasion to go up and, well, that's tough rocks.
Yeah.
I had an occasion to use the courthouse offices recently, and once again, they stepped right up to the counter, and you're so well taken care of.
Oh, yes.
We taxpayers really get our money's worth out of that county courthouse.
We do. We can't complain a bit.
Well, we appreciate you folks being with us. You've hung on every word that we've said. We appreciate all the phone calls, by the way. Well, I don't know where I was going with this quotation that I found. I just decided to jot it down and use it today in any event. So it says, in a world of inhumanity, war and terrorism, American citizenship is a very precious possession. And that's one of the things we were going to talk about today, but that didn't happen. So thank you for Viewpoint, and you want to call your mother and your father and your grandmother and tell you what a great morning it was.